has been a crazy 2 weeks. I got this like really weird head cold 2 weeks ago, and then last week I went snowboarding over the weekend and I injured my shoulder. I think I got a little bit overconfident when I was trying to figure out my toe side, and I just completely body slammed into the slopes with my arm in between the process. But I was so excited to be finally filming this video for you guys today. It has literally been on my to-do list for like the past 2 weeks, but we are going to be diving deep into my current vlogging setup. I actually did make a video on this like 5 to 6 months ago, but I feel like that was when I was initially starting my YouTube journey, so I feel like this is going to be like my updated, more in-depth, extended version. But if you haven't seen that video, and quick little spoiler, I did buy new pieces of gear, and then I finished the video with like a little trial run of the updated setup. It was kind of like a mix of a first impression and what I was using that was working really well at that time. Within the past 5 to 6 months, I've definitely fully tested out every single component, and I even added some new stuff like this camera bag. So now I feel like I'm finally ready to go, and I can give you guys a really in-depth look and feel as to what I'm using, what I'd recommend, and why. If you want to really hone in on your filming style in terms of how your videos look and feel, then I think there are 3 key components to your vlogging setup that you absolutely need to nail, which are your camera body, your lens, and your mic, which I'm gonna call the vlogging trio, and we're gonna deep dive into each of my own. The camera body I use is the Sony a7C. This is a full frame mirrorless camera in a super compact body, which makes it great for vlogging. It shoots in 4K up to 30 frames per second with no crop, so this basically means you get that full scene without anything getting cut off on the edges. It also has gyro stabilization built into the camera, which is going to basically allow you to stabilize your footage while you're editing, and this is really helpful if you do plan on vlogging a lot of your stuff handheld. Also, a little side note, and just like my own personal experience, Sony's stabilization software is actually incredible. I would seriously never buy like a Sony camera body if it didn't have it built into the camera, because it's only compatible, or whatever the word is, with certain Sony cameras. So just make sure you double check that when you are looking through different camera body options. And since it is a full frame camera and it has a full frame sensor, it does perform really well in low light. And then within the settings itself and all the buttons that come on this camera, you can actually customize it in a way that works best for you and your own filming style. I'm sure a lot of other cameras do this as well, but I absolutely love this feature because I don't even have to really look when I have to adjust things on the go. I know some of the stuff I might have listed might sound super jarring to you guys, especially if you are just starting out and learning about cameras, but I am here to tell you, and I'm speaking from personal experience, that it is completely okay to shoot with this camera on auto. That is genuinely what I did, and I did that for quite some time when I first got this camera. I'm pretty sure like my most viewed video on YouTube, I shot that in auto, and then I did like a light color grade, and that was like when I was a baby color grader and I didn't really know that much. Having a camera body like this is just going to give you that baseline level of quality so that you can actually focus on learning all the other things at your own pace. If you guys are curious about my specific camera settings, I shoot in 4K, 24 frames per second, and a 1/50 shutter speed, which gives me a more realistic cinematic look. To keep colors consistent, I do try to set my white balance manually, and I'm definitely at the point where I try to avoid shooting things on auto as much as possible. With that being said, depending on the day and if it's super cloudy and there's like a lot of sunlight coming in and out, then I will actually set my ISO to auto, but I'll limit the range from 100 to 6400, which is the recommended range for the Sony a7C to avoid any grainy looking footage. That range is specific to the Sony a7C, so I would just double check and look up for whatever camera body that you choose. It might be a little bit different. And then depending on my lighting situation or what subject I'm focusing on, I will manually adjust my f-stop to control my depth of field and my exposure. Finally, let's talk about why I chose the a7C as the most practical option for me. A7C is, as I've mentioned, a full frame camera, but the ZV-E10 is an APS-C lens. Like I mentioned before, having a full frame camera gives it a lot better low light performance. You're gonna get better image quality and depth of field. And the a7C still keeps that relatively compact size that is perfect for vlogging. Even build-wise, the a7C has a viewfinder, which you wouldn't think to be a really big issue, but the ZV-E10 does not, so you're only able to rely on the LED screen. And if you have ever shot videos or used a camera outside in a lot of sunlight, you're just gonna deal with a lot of glare and you're not gonna be able to see your screen, and it's actually quite annoying. Finally, the biggest non-negotiable for me is the a7C has in-body image stabilization and the ZV-E10 does not. Basically, what this ends up looking like is if you were to upload clips that you took with your ZV-E10 versus your Sony a7C to the Sony stabilization software, which I believe is called Catalyst Browse, it would show the clips that you took on your ZV-E10 is not compatible, and you would not be able to take advantage of Sony's incredible stabilization software. We are going to move on to lenses, and I actually switched lenses because we are going to be talking about this one that I have right here. For that, I did want to say that I feel like picking a lens is actually so much more complicated than picking a camera body, just because there's so many options and brands, and it's really hard to figure out what focal length works for you until you actually start testing a few out. But I have stuck stuck with this lens truly ever since I got it, and this was actually one of the purchases I made in my original video. This one is the Sony 16-35 power zoom f4 lens. I know I mentioned f-stop earlier, and if you're unfamiliar with what that means, this is basically all you really need to know. Lower the number means it's going to perform better in low light, and you're also going to get more background blur because it's going to focus on what is closest to the lens. So something like an f1.8 is going to perform a lot better in low light than something like this, which is an f4. Because I mentioned that this is a 16-35mm, I'll just like quickly go over focal length. The lower the number, the wider the shot is going to be, so you're going to get a lot more background in the frame, and it's great because you just get a lot of context, and it's just like more of like an immersive experience, if that makes sense. And then the higher the number means the more narrow the shot is going to be, which is great for things like detail shots and b-roll, stuff that you want super zoomed in, or you can even think of it as like taking a portrait of someone. The lens that I'm actually shooting on is a 20mm, but this one goes actually to a 16, so it's even more wide than what you're seeing right now, but it can zoom into a 35mm, which is what I would describe as like a medium range focal length. Now I want to talk about why I think this lens is such a practical option, especially if you're thinking about going into vlogging. Unlike a traditional zoom lens where the lens actually physically extends out like this, and I have one to show you. This one is my Sony 24-70mm. What makes this lens so different is it has actually a power zoom, which essentially means all of that like zooming function happens within the lens itself. Basically the size, or more specifically the length of this lens, actually never changes, which is something I would say in the lens world you typically only get with fixed focal point lenses. So for example, this is a 20mm. I can't change it to an 18 or like zoom in to like a 35. I am stuck at this focal point of a 20. But with this lens, you're basically able to get like the best of both worlds. You can have a super wide shot at a 16 or go a little bit more zoomed in to a medium shot at a 35, but you are not sacrificing its compact size and carrying something like super heavy like this lens. Even design and functionality wise, this lens is just really, really cool. It has this switch or lever here that enables you to zoom in. It does come with that like typical zoom ring, but I find myself, I use this one way more often. It's basically what you would essentially get on a digital camera, where you have this like zooming lever. On top of that, they decided to go above and beyond with this lens and include a little aperture ring, which you'd be surprised a lot of lenses as you get into it don't really have one, and it's quite annoying because it just makes it so much easier to control and change your f-stop on the go. This lens has truly been so game changer for me. I rarely swap it out because it just has that perfect balance of what's convenient to carry and what is really functional to use on the go. Now after all that, it probably sounded like this lens is just absolutely perfect, but there is one huge limitation to it, and it is the fact that this is an f4. I know on paper like an f1.8 versus like an f4 doesn't seem like it would be a huge difference, but in practice you'd be really, really surprised. Like once the sun starts to set, it actually becomes a little bit tricky to use this lens without any kind of artificial light. But you know, I typically shoot in daylight anyway, so it really isn't that big of a deal, but I did want to let you guys know in case you were looking at other lenses with a better f-stop. We have finally made our way to the last part of our vlogging trio, which is finding a good mic. Even though having good visuals is really important, I'd say your audio matters just as much, if not more. There have actually been times where I've had really good filming sequences or visuals, but the audio was just like off or just really bad, and I ended up cutting the entire thing. Don't necessarily need like the fanciest mic out there, but I definitely recommend using something other than the mic that's built into your camera body. The mic that I use is the Sony ECM M1 mic. Just as a quick little disclaimer, if you don't have a compatible Sony camera, this mic will actually not work. Basically has this mount that connects to the Sony camera directly via a hot shoe connection, which enables this to become a fully wireless setup, which is exactly why I got it. I also got this mic because it has a lot of other fun features that I think differentiate it from a lot of other shotgun mics out there on the market. For example, it has this dial on the back where you can actually control the direction that you want the audio to pick up, and I believe there are 8 total options. When it comes to vlogging, that's actually such a nice feature because sometimes you might be shooting like with a friend and they're like in front of the camera and you're in the back, but you don't want like the audio to be like not balanced, if that makes sense. Or like a setup like this, like I just want the audio picking up what's in front of the camera and like nothing else like behind it or like to the sides. Also, as far as shotgun mics go, I feel like it's a really compact one. Like I compared it to my Rode wireless Go 2 mics, and it's actually not that much bigger than it, which is crazy. What makes it even better than the Rode wireless Go 2 mics is it draws power directly from the camera body, so I never have to worry about charging it. Biggest practical benefit that I noticed ever since since I switched over to this mic is the fact that I never worry that my audio isn't connected or that my mic is accidentally like turned off. Something that I would accidentally do from time to time with my other mic setups is not like properly check that both of the wires are connected properly. Like I would always have like one that was definitely connected, but the other one was like slightly ajar. And there's literally nothing more frustrating than when you like finish a take and you realize that like the audio wasn't connected and you have to do the whole thing over. Before this mic, I used to use the Rode shotgun mic, and I feel like that one took me forever to like take on and off. Just something about the screw that was weird to me. Secondly, sometimes it just wouldn't screw on properly and it would just always like slide or topple off, and it was just super annoying. But this one, it's literally so simple. It's not even a screw, like it's just a simple twist on and twist off. Especially when it comes to travel vlogging, and if that's an area of vlogging that you really want to pursue, you're gonna notice there are going to be a lot of times where you have to constantly put your camera away and also take it out. When you're dealing with like trying to quickly screw on your mic and also make sure both of the wires are attached, it just becomes a lot more fussy. And there's like nothing worse when you like want to capture something but it just took you too long to set everything up. So something like this mic has just been so much more efficient because it's just a quick twist on or twist off and you like throw everything in your bag, or you just like take these two pieces out and it's super quick to put together. I obviously know this is a more premium option. It is not a cheap mic at all, but I feel like this mic has genuinely been so life-changing. Seriously, swear by it because it's just made filming and making vlogs so much easier. Because that officially concludes the vlogging trio section. Let me know if you guys have any questions. I tried to go as in-depth as possible without making it too like confusing or technically jarring. But now we are going to move on to my other essentials, which if you guys noticed in the beginning of this video, I put everything in this little bag. We are going to start with my small but mighty accessories. I would say accessories are kind of like how you fine-tune your setup. I definitely think it depends on like how you film, where you typically film, and also your specific camera body settings. I think I've really narrowed down my accessory list. Like I never leave, especially if I am planning on shooting, without these 3 items. And this last one is like a new one I'm trying to implement, but we will get into all of these. So my first little go-to accessory is this little thing. This is called a lens pen, and this one is actually, I believe, the original version of the lens pen. 100% recommend you getting the original one because I actually have gotten additional lens pens through camera cleaning kits that I've gotten over the years. I actually accidentally ruined one of my protective lens filters using one of the other lens pens. On one side of the lens pen is this little tip so that you can easily wipe off any smudges or fingerprints off of your lens. I think what ended up happening with the other lens pen is it had a little bit of the adhesive like sticking out on the side. So when I went to go clean my protective filter, some of that sticky residue ended up transferring onto my lens. So yeah, I don't know, maybe it was just that particular lens pen was just kind of faulty. But at the same time, I've just noticed that this one cleans my lenses a lot better. I felt like even after I would use those other lens pens that I still would have some kind of something left over on my camera. But with this, I feel like I'm always very reassured that my lens is completely clean. And then on the other half of this, there's no twist off, but it's actually this little push lever, and it comes with this little brush so you can like dust off any particles that end up landing on your camera. This I would say is 100% a non-negotiable if you do plan on shooting a lot of content outside. There's nothing worse than when you get to the edit and you see that like tiny little black speck showing up on your frame, and it's just because you didn't properly dust off or clean off your camera lens. The second accessory that I always carry around with me is this little hex key screwdriver. I would say this is more handy or applies if you always use some kind of tripod or something called a quick release plate. If you don't know what a quick release plate is, I'm going to break it down super quickly, but it basically breaks down into 2 separate parts. So the first part is this little base plate. plate or mount that attaches to the underside of your camera. And the second part is this little locking mechanism plate that you attach to like whatever tripod you're using. And basically combined, it allows you to take on and off your camera relatively quickly. It's a lot quicker than actually trying to screw on the underside of your camera to whatever tripod. And this to me, when it's locked into place, it just feels a lot more secure and I'm not worried my camera is kind of like adjusting or moving around. I always like to make sure these mounts are very tightly secured to my camera, and I feel like I'm able to do that best when I have a little screwdriver like this. And then on top of that, if I am planning on going out and about vlogging, I do like the option of being able to remove this mount, because sometimes I'm using like different kinds of tripods, or I'm just like keeping it really simple and just propping up my camera. So this little screwdriver is just so helpful. It doesn't take up a lot of space and it just makes it so much easier to remove this plate, especially when I'm on the go. And then I literally never leave without this. This is my mini white balance card. It is literally like the size of a credit card, which I think is incredible. Just a super handy tool if you do have a camera that allows you to manually set your white balance. I will say I struggle using this, especially if I'm vlogging a lot of outdoor content and I'm constantly going from place to place. For those kinds of situations, I typically set my white balance to auto because I'm just mainly relying on one light source, which is the sun. This comes in so handy for those situations when you know you're going to be filming inside, because when it comes to indoor lighting, you're dealing with a lot of different kinds of light sources. Even something like the tone of the walls actually makes a difference, because obviously the walls are going to kind of bounce off a little bit of light. And then on top of that, probably will run into the situation where there will be different light bulbs and they'll all be different temperatures. Essentially, it's going to be really hard for your camera to know what white balance to set it to if you have it on auto in those kinds of situations. So having something like this white balance card is super handy, especially if you want to get into color grading, because if your colors are not consistent across scenes, it's going to be very, very complicated. And I typically bring all three of these elements, but anytime I know I'm going to be inside and I'm planning on bringing my camera, this one is always going to come with me. And then when it comes to tripods on the go, I personally like to keep it like really, really minimal and super lightweight. First option is super simple. It basically just does like the bare minimum. It is just some tripod legs, and I attach like a ball head to the top so that I am able to control the angle of my camera. Tripod legs are actually from my DJI Osmo Pocket 3. Maybe this is just like a me thing and I'm just like really bad about like thinking outside of the box, or I'm just like a super lazy vlogger, but I rarely come into the situation where I have like a good height size table, or like somewhere where I'm able to like nicely put down my camera without there being like anything obstructing on the top too, like height wise. Because I used to carry around like an actual like mini tripod, like this one that I'm using is my PGY Tech Mantis Pod 2. It just always ended up being like too tall for like situations, or like too wide for like the space that I was trying to prop it up on. I've just been like sticking with this. I have the flexibility in making sure my camera is level with the ball head, and these tripod legs are literally as close to the ground as possible, so it never takes up too much space. But lately I've been trying to get used to using something like this. This is called a magic arm, and this one specifically is from this brand called Small Rig. This is what I would call like a great tripod alternative. Basically on one end you have this clamp so you can attach it to things like the side of a table, a door, a handle, or even like a railing. And then the other side obviously attaches to your camera. And then with this little lever, you're basically able to adjust the direction, the angle, and the height. What's also really awesome about something like this is you can get like a wide variety of shots. Like you can have it be like a super straightforward setup and just have your camera propped on the top of this, or you can kind of angle it downwards and get like a really cool overhead shot. Something like this definitely gives you a lot more options. You just kind of have to think outside of the box. I know I'm more of like an at-home blogger, but I definitely want to get used to using something like this, especially if I want to film more stuff out and about. And finally, to house all of this gear, I have my camera bag, which is like the newest addition to my setup currently. And fun fact, I actually use this even when I'm not planning on filming, just because that is how good and like spacious this bag is. This bag is from this European brand called loulex, and this one is specifically their organizer bag. In my first vlogging setup, I actually showed you guys a different bag from loulex, which was their fanny pack. I still do really like that bag, but to be honest, ever since I added this one, I genuinely haven't used my fanny pack since. And quick little side story on like the design and like look of this bag, but when I first started wearing it, a lot of my friends actually complimented me, but they didn't realize that it was like my new camera bag. So yeah, just to showcase just how much like an everyday look and feel that this bag kind of gives. So the exterior has a front zippered pocket as well as one on the back. The website says it's made out of this first class microfiber leather, and it's quite flexible. And what I really like about the material is it really molds onto your body. It doesn't feel very like boxy or like too jarring in the way that it sits or lays. They also claim that every loulex bag is reinforced with foam and some kind of base plate so that your gear is always protected. Moving on to the straps, as you can see, they They are very thick and quite sturdy, which I know to some this might seem like a little bit too thick, but when you're carrying around like tons of gear, you don't want like a really thin strap digging into your skin. And there's even like an adjustable shoulder pad for even extra comfort. Along the strap itself, there is like a dedicated section for you to be able to carry your camera completely hands-free with these camera straps. And if you're not really feeling them or you feel like they're getting in the way, you can also always detach them. As for like a really cute like personal touch, I did add some like keychains. Like I have a little Smisky keychain and then some stuff from One Piece that my brother and my friend Anna got for me. Quickly moving on to the interior, there is obviously a ton of space in here, but there's also a lot of organization as well. Kind of have like this main compartment. I typically put my camera in here. This skinnier compartment where you can put like something like a tablet. I typically put like my notebooks and some pens in here on the go. In between those two compartments is this really skinny magnetic one. This also helps to provide like a little bit of extra padding. Also a zippered pocket, and they also broke up like one side of it into like 3 little pockets. Flipping over the bag so that you guys can see this side, loulex loves including like little SD card holders. I don't really use these. I just kind of like throw in my SD cards in their cases. Another big pouch, a little slot for like some kind of pen. Then there's actually like 2 little pockets on both sides that I typically put like my tripods or anything that I want to like stand upright. A key fuse, I honestly don't really use that. On the very bottom of this side of the bag, there's like actually a little pocket for like an air tag. That is like the biggest little general overview of this bag. And I know that was kind of a lot, so let me break it down in a more like practical and functional sense in terms of like my experience with it over like the past few months. So honestly, the biggest reason why I wanted to switch over to something a little bit bigger than the fanny pack is because I wanted to be able to carry both my camera essentials as well as my non-camera essentials. If you're a girl, I feel like you'll totally get me on this point, but it's just so important to be able to carry everything for any possible situation that my brain can think of. Like I want to carry around like extra lip balms, lip glosses, hand sanitizer, like even a comb. Like my hair, I always tell my friends, is like my outfit, so it always needs to be like super orderly. So yeah, I really needed a bag that was like truly able to like fit it all, as well as all of my filming and like tech nerdy stuff. And I feel like the default option when you like want to carry everything is to just like throw everything in like a tote bag, but I hate that because it just lacks so much like structure and organization. I hate when like things are like jumbled together and it's really hard to find things. So that's why I'm like so obsessed with this bag, because as you guys can see, there was just like a ton of organization like built into it. At the same time, there's just like plenty of space for bigger items as well. I've definitely noticed with like a lot of other camera bags that I've seen on the market, they're almost like so structured to the point that they're not like flexible enough to use day to day. This bag is what I would describe as having like that perfect balance between having customizable features as well as not being like a disorderly mess. We're literally losing daylight here. I have been filming from like 10 in the morning to almost like 5 p.m. But that finally concludes my vlogging gear setup. I honestly get that question of like what camera I use and like what settings I use all the time in my comment section. So I hope this video was helpful. Ever since like the first vlogging setup video that I made, this is like the exact setup that I have been using. If you watch videos from like that time frame on, you'll really see like the progression of like me really getting used to it. Definitely let me know in the comments what you guys are currently using, any goals you have with like YouTube and like filming in general, or maybe like something that you do want to upgrade to. But I hope you guys enjoyed this week's video. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching and just listening to me blab on and on and on, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!